This happened about 6 months ago. I had just taken a job as a security guard at a big, deserted shopping mall. I used to work in an office, but after the layoff, I needed the money. Night shifts were my only option. At first I thought it'd be easy, just walk around and check the doors. But from the start, the place felt off. It was so quiet. The empty stores were unsettling. I made my rounds, but I started hearing things, soft footsteps echoing in the halls. At first I thought it was just my mind, maybe a draft or something. I rolled my eyes and pushed it aside. As my shifts continued, the sounds became more frequent. I never saw anyone, but I felt like someone was always watching me. There were shadows too. I would catch something moving at the corner of my eye, but when I turned around, nothing was there. I checked the security monitors, but they showed empty hallways. I thought maybe I was losing it. Then, one night, I was near the food court. I remembered how lively it used to be. Now, it was silent. I heard the humming again. It was clearer this time, almost sweet. I froze. The sound seemed to come from the back of the mall. I approached slowly, my heart racing. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. I looked at the cameras again, but everything was still empty. That night, while I sat in the security office, something flickered on one of the screens. It was a figure, just for a second. I leaned closer, squinting. It looked like a person standing in front of a closed store. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed out, but when I got there, no one was around. I felt like I'd stepped back in time, when the mall was full of life. The air felt heavy, and then I saw it. A shadow moved down the hallway, just beyond the flickering lights. I couldn't tell if it was real, or just in my head. "Is someone there?" I called out, but of course, there was no answer. I took a step forward, but my legs felt like lead. I don't remember how I ran back to the office, but I slammed the door behind me. I sat there for what felt like hours, heart pounding. I never found out what was in that mall. The shadows, the sounds, that feeling of being watched, I still can't shake any of it. Every time I think back to that job, I wonder what was following me. I finished my shifts after that, but I couldn't return. I've never found the courage to step back inside. The mall still stands empty, but a part of me hopes I never have to face whatever was there again. I still look over my shoulder sometimes, thinking I might see it. Whatever it was that haunted my nights, it still baffles me. The next week I tried to distract myself. I focused on other work and avoided thinking about the mall. But one evening, while scrolling through the news, I saw a story about a fire that had burned through an abandoned section of the mall. My heart dropped. They mentioned that it happened late at night when no one was around. I knew I had to go back. Even though I was terrified, curiosity drove me. If there was something in there, I had to know. I barely slept the night before. When I arrived at the mall, the air felt different. Thick. As I stepped inside, I was hit with that same old feeling. The shadows, the silence. I walked slowly through the entrance, my flashlight beam slicing through the dark. The burnt areas were still charred, but most of the mall was untouched. I made my way toward the food court, where I had heard the humming. Perhaps I could uncover what was behind everything. The first few minutes were the hardest. Every creak of the building made me jump. I could still picture the silhouette I had seen, lurking just out of view. Steeling myself, I ventured deeper into the mall. As I rounded the corner, something caught my eye. A flicker of movement near an old arcade. I paused and aimed my flashlight in that direction. The light illuminated dust particles dancing in the air, but nothing else. Still, I felt compelled to investigate. When I reached the arcade, I found it empty, but the air felt charged. There was something off about the place, a buzz in the atmosphere that made my skin prickle. Looking around, I noticed a loose control panel at the back of a game machine. It was strange, almost as if someone had recently been tampering with it. I crouched down and pulled it away, revealing a small compartment. Inside, there was a tattered piece of paper with strange symbols on it. I hadn't seen anything like it before. My curiosity was bubbling. I pulled it out and examined it under my flashlight. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the arcade. I jerked my head up. Everything went still. My heart raced. Was it just my imagination? Or was someone really in here with me? I turned my flashlight toward the source of the noise, but all I saw was dark, empty space. I felt compelled to leave, but the symbols in my hand seemed to beckon me. It didn't make sense, but I wanted to know more. I tucked the paper into my pocket and carefully retraced my steps. As I stepped back into the corridor, I was struck by a feeling of being watched. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I quickened my pace, my mind racing. That's when I heard it again. The sweet humming, more pronounced than ever. It called to me, wrapping around me like a fog. I followed the sound against my better judgment. It led me further into the depths of the mall, toward a section I hadn't ventured into before. The humming grew louder, more urgent, like it was alive. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered off, plunging me into a darkness I had never experienced before. Panic rose in my throat. I fumbled for my flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. "Hello?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. I strained to hear anything. Footsteps, whispers, even the humming. But all I could hear was my own ragged breathing. Whatever I had stumbled into, it was far from over. I was trapped in silence. My heart thumped wildly in my chest. I twisted the flashlight, desperately pressing the button, but it remained lifeless. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I couldn't let fear take over, but the thick darkness pressed in on me. I took a tentative step forward, hoping to navigate my way back. The humming had faded, but I felt its absence, like a chapter that had ended too abruptly. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my arm. A cold breath, or maybe just my mind playing tricks. I jerked away, almost losing my balance. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself. "You can do this." With each cautious footstep, I strained to hear any sound. Footsteps, rustling, anything. I noticed a faint flicker across the closed storefronts, a glimmer of light, just at the edge of my vision. I took a few steps toward it, my instinct pulling me closer. The lights flickered back on, revealing a narrow hallway ahead, with shreds of colorful signage hanging from the walls, remnants of happier times. But instead of warmth, the sight sent a chill through me. The air felt electric, the energy charged with an unknown tension. I stepped into the hallway and followed the light. As I neared the end, I spotted it. A door, slightly ajar. The flickering light was coming from inside. My heart raced. What could be in there? Against all reason, I pushed the door open, the creaky hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the room was a blend of chaos and remnants. Old mannequins stood still, their faces cracked and gray. A fallen display case lay shattered on the floor, glass sparkling like fractured memories. But it was what lay in the center that caught my breath. A small, glowing orb pulsed softly, bathing the room in a ghostly light. I stepped closer, mesmerized. It almost felt alive, humming a tune that danced through the air and pulled me in. My hands itched to touch it. As I reached out, the ground shook beneath me, and the orb flickered aggressively, as if warning me away. "Whoa!" I gasped, stumbling back. But as I did, the humming grew louder, and suddenly the door slammed shut behind me with a bang. I jumped, the noise echoing like thunder. I pounded on the door, panic rising within me. "Let me out!" Then I heard it. A low growl, building from the shadows behind me. I spun around, heart racing. The last remnants of light faded, and darkness engulfed the room. I couldn't see anything but sensed a presence, an unmistakable weight in the air, and the heat of breath against my neck. Instinct kicked in. I grabbed the flashlight from my pocket, turning it on with shaking hands. The beam flickered weakly, cutting through the dark. That's when I saw it. Eyes, glowing and watching me from the far corner. A chill sank into my bones as realization dawned. I was not alone. I backed up against the door, my breath quickening, half expecting the weight to bear down on me. I had stumbled into something terrifying, and now I needed a way out. But as I gathered myself, the growl deepened, and the glow from the orb flared one last time, illuminating something incomprehensible. I could feel it, a force pulling at me, urging me to step forward, even as dread clawed at my insides. What was this thing? What had I uncovered in this forgotten place? With no answers, I felt a primal instinct to escape. But where could I go? I took a shaky breath and peered into the darkness. The beam of my dim flashlight barely reached the corner where those eyes glowed. Panic surged through me. My instincts screamed for me to get out, but my body felt frozen in place. Then, the growl escalated into something more. A low rumble mixed with a snarl. It was an unnatural sound that skittered along my spine like icy fingers. I aimed the flickering light in that direction, heart pounding in a frantic rhythm. The beam caught a glimpse of something moving. Quick, fluid, just beyond the edge of the light. My breath caught in my throat. Instinct kicked in again. I couldn't just stand there. I took a step back, fumbling as I felt for the doorknob. My palms were slick with sweat, and my fingers slipped over the cold metal. I twisted and pulled with all my strength, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic crept in, cold and suffocating, as I twisted the knob again. Nothing. The glowing orb pulsed faintly, casting eerie shadows across the room. I dared to glance back at the darkness, but now the eyes had vanished. The growl faded too, leaving a haunting silence in its wake. I straightened myself, heart racing. What had just happened? "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. No response. Just that silence, thick and oppressive. I felt like I was being watched, though I couldn't see anything. It was like being in the eye of a storm, and I knew I had to make a choice. Gathering my courage, I turned back to the orb. It was beckoning me, almost hypnotic in its glow. The insatiable curiosity mixed with my fear. I bit my lip, sprinkled with the faintest glimmer of hope. Maybe this thing could tell me what I needed to know. With tentative steps, I moved closer again, but I remained cautious, unsure of what would happen next. As I approached, the room shifted. The air felt heavier, and the orb began to vibrate more intensely. I reached out a hand, but before I could make contact, a shadow erupted from the corner. A figure emerged, silhouetted against the faint light, towering and formless. It was like a nightmare come to life. I couldn't make out distinct features, just a hulking mass with elongated limbs that seemed to writhe. My heart raced anew as I stumbled back, instinctively knocking over a mannequin. It crashed to the ground, shattering the silence. The figure hesitated, its attention snapping toward me. Everything inside me screamed to run. I turned and lunged for the door again, but my feet stumbled over the scattered remains of the display. I felt the figure's presence behind me, closing in. Desperation propelled me. What if I had to face it? With one last heave, I shoved my shoulder against the door. Miraculously, it burst open, and I tumbled into the hallway. I scrambled to my feet, panting heavily. Fear clenched my chest. What had I just unleashed? Where was I even supposed to go now? Then, I heard a faint whisper echoing throughout the corridor. It was almost like a name, soft and seductive. My blood ran cold. I had to figure out what was going on. But was I ready for whatever came next? I turned down the hallway, searching for a way out. The air felt electric around me, like a storm waiting to break. I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting to see that monstrous figure looming just beyond the threshold I had escaped. But the darkness remained still, an unsettling void swallowing everything whole. The whispers grew louder, curling and twisting through the air, a chorus of voices, faint yet unmistakable. I pressed my back against the cold wall, scanning the corridor. My flashlight flickered again, casting uneven pools of light, revealing peeling paint and crumbling plaster. It felt like the building itself was falling apart around me. I moved down the shrill hall, the whispers swirling as I walked. "Help us!" they seemed to say. And I paused, my heart pounding faster. Who was asking for help? Curiosity gnawed at me, but so did fear. What if this was a trap? What if I was being lured back into the darkness? I shook my head, clearing the doubt away for the moment. I had to find a way out. Maybe the exit was near. I stepped cautiously forward, stepping over debris and shattered glass. That's when I noticed a door set slightly ajar at the end of the corridor, a sliver of light spilling out into the dark hall. I hesitated, my instincts blaring alarms in my mind. But that light looked inviting, a hope of escape. I quickened my pace, practically sprinting toward it. I could hear my breath echoing off the walls, a frantic rhythm in the clingy silence. As I reached the door, I put my hand on the handle. Just before I twisted it, the whispering stopped. Silence fell like a blanket, heavy and suffocating. I froze, pressing my ear against the door, hoping to hear something to ease my anxiety. But there was nothing. The stillness was worse than the noise. I turned the handle slowly, ready to bolt if necessary. To my surprise, it opened easily, the door creaking as it swung outward. The room within was dimly lit, shadows pooling in every corner. It smelled of dust and decay, and my flashlight beam struggled to cut through the thick air. I stepped inside, wincing as the door clicked shut behind me. The crack of light I had seen was now completely blocked, and a wave of claustrophobia crashed over me. Before I could collect my thoughts, I noticed something glinting in the far corner, an object half buried under layers of debris. My curiosity ignited once more. I approached cautiously. As I got closer, I recognized it was an old pocket watch, its surface tarnished and cracked. I picked it up, examining the intricate designs, and a chill radiated through me. There was something eerily familiar about it. Then I heard it again, a low growl, deep and chilling, resonating from just beyond the darkened doorway. My heart raced, pulse pounding in my ears. I knew I had precious seconds before whatever was out there surged into the room. I had to decide. Would I confront the thing in the shadows or leave the watch, whatever its significance, behind? My hands trembled as I held it tightly, fear clawing at me. Just as I took a step back toward the door, the whispers started again, this time urgent and frantic. "Don't leave!" they begged, sending ice through my veins. In that instant, my decision was made. I had to understand this. But just as I turned to face the darkness, I saw it. The glint of eyes reflecting in the low light, watching intently from the shadows. My breath caught in my throat as the eyes in the darkness narrowed. They glowed, an unsettling predatory gleam that sent a shiver down my spine. I held the watch tight against my chest, suddenly feeling its weight like a leaden anchor in my hands. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself, but my voice trembled in the quiet room. The growl morphed into a series of low hisses, and before I could react, the air shifted. Something moved in the shadows, a shape flowing like oil across the darkened walls, morphing and twisting. I stepped back, heart racing, searching for any hints of escape. The whispers escalated, now intertwining with an eerie melody, haunting yet compelling. They filled the room, wrapping around me like a shroud. "Find the truth," they insisted, the urgency palpable. I couldn't tell if they were warning me or urging me. I felt trapped, but the watch, the symbols on its surface seemed to pulse in tandem with the whispers, drawing my attention. Ignoring the instinct to flee, I took a breath and stepped deeper into the room. My flashlight revealed more debris, old papers, broken furniture, and photographs that faded into shadow. My pulse thudded louder than before, drowning out the whispers, filling the stale air. What was I doing here? I approached the photographs, squinting to make out the faces. A family, perhaps? They smiled under a sun that had long since vanished. But the more I looked, the more familiar they seemed, all eerily resembling the faint echoes of people who had lived here long ago. The sense of déjà vu crashed over me. I turned back, realizing I had lost track of the eyes. Anxiety spiked, and I swung the flashlight, illuminating the room once more. Nothing was there, but I felt it, something lurking just out of sight. My instincts screamed for me to run, yet I felt anchored by the watch in my hand, as if it contained some critical piece of a puzzle I needed to solve. Suddenly, the door behind me rattled violently. My heart lurched. It was as if the void behind the door had been stirred into action. I whirled around, but in an instant, the door flew open and slammed against the wall. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, a shadow larger than the space allowed, backlit by the faint illumination of the hallway. My throat went dry and I stepped back, instinctively raising the pocket watch as if it would protect me. "Who are you?" I managed to croak out. The figure stepped forward, and in the dim light, I could see a glint of something sharp in its hands. My mind raced. I was caught between fleeing or confronting whatever this was. Then everything changed in the blink of an eye. The whispers reached a fever pitch, a swirling chaos of sound around me, drowning out everything else. I felt dizzy, the air thick and suffocating. The watch in my hand tugged at me, as if trying to pull me into a different reality. That's when I felt it. The sensation of being watched multiplied, the pressure of unseen eyes locking onto me from all corners. I had to act. I couldn't stay frozen forever. In that moment, I made a choice. I would face whatever was in the shadows, whatever this strange twist of fate led me to. Gripping the watch tightly, I squared my shoulders and stepped forward, ready to challenge the darkness that haunted my very breath. The figure moved slowly, revealing itself as a man, but one who was unsettlingly distorted in the flickering light. His sharp features seemed too pronounced, exaggerated, and his eyes were dark pits that swallowed the light. I felt my heartbeat quickening, every instinct urging me to turn and flee. But I stood my ground, the watch feeling almost alive in my grip. "Why are you here?" he rasped. His voice slithered through the darkness, carrying an unnerving mix of curiosity and threat. I'm looking for something," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt empty, even to me. What was I really looking for? The man's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. In that moment, I thought he might lunge at me. Instead, he stepped aside, gesturing toward the vast shadows behind him. "Then come find it." I hesitated, my mind chaotic with fear and confusion. Behind him was an even darker stretch of the hallway, a place the flashlight dared not illuminate. I could sense the pull of the whispers growing louder, as if they were beckoning me to enter. Before I could deny the invitation, I took a cautious step past him, the air around me suffocating. With each step further away from the threshold of the door, the light seemed to fade. My flashlight flickered, almost as if it too was afraid of what lay ahead. As I moved deeper into the hallway, the floor creaked beneath me, a low groan in the silence. I tried to focus, shaking the disorientation from my head. "Where am I?" I whispered, half to myself, half to the man who shadowed me. The whispers changed, merging with a distant echo of something deeper. "You are where truth resides," he replied, his voice growing softer. "But truth often comes with a price." I turned to confront him, but he was gone. Just like that, he had vanished, leaving me alone in the growing darkness. My breath hitched as panic threatened to control me. I spun around, searching for the figure, but the hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, an unsettling maze. The pressure on my chest swelled, and I felt compelled to press on, the watch burning against my palm. Suddenly, in the faintest slivers of light, I spotted something on the wall. I stepped closer, my heart racing in anticipation. Symbols that mirrored the engravings on my watch were etched crudely into the plaster, pulsating with the same eerie rhythm as the whispers. What did they mean? I reached out, tracing the lines with my fingertips. A jolt of energy shot through me, and an image flashed before my eyes. Snippets of memories that weren't my own, of a family laughing, of bright summer days long past. But just as quickly as they came, they faded, leaving an unsettling emptiness in their wake. Then, the shadows began to shift, and a cold laugh echoed through the corridor. Something was awakening. Not just memories, but something darker. Something that had been waiting for me. I spun around, eyes wide with realization. I wasn't just here to find answers. I was being hunted. A chilling thought broke through the haze. I had just unleashed something I didn't understand, and now it was searching for me. And that glint in the man's eyes. It wasn't just curiosity. They were watching me, and the hunt had just begun. I pressed against the wall, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Anxiety clawed at my throat as I listened to the echo of that laugh. It felt like a taunt, encouraging me to give in to the panic rising within me. I had to move. Standing still was not an option anymore. The corridor seemed to stretch infinitely, casting doubt on my direction. I had no sense of what waited for me around the next corner, but the whispers grew louder, like an incoming tide. It felt like they were pulling me back toward the symbols, urging me to understand. I turned back to the wall, running my fingers over the engravings again, desperate to make sense of their meaning. Each touch sent sparks of memory through my mind. Images of places I had never been flooded my thoughts, the crowded streets of a city, a tall tower adorned in bright colors, and figures dancing in the sun. It felt like the answers I sought resided just out of reach. But the cold laugh returned, echoing from deeper in the hall. I shivered despite myself. I was not alone in this darkness. Whatever had been awakened was keen on making its presence known. A crashing sound made me jump. Something heavy thudded behind me, followed by a guttural growl that reverberated off the walls. I didn't wait to see what it was. I turned and ran, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly as I hurried down the corridor. Each step felt heavier, like the air itself was trying to hold me back. My flashlight blinked once, twice, then flickered out, plunging me into darkness. Panic shot through me, and I fumbled to turn it back on. It sputtered to life, casting a narrow beam against the damp concrete walls. I pressed onward, my steps echoing loudly in my ears. Then I noticed it. A door off to my left, slightly ajar. Without thinking, I bolted toward it. I pushed it open and stumbled inside, quickly shutting it behind me. I leaned against the door, heart racing, straining to hear any signs of my pursuer. It was dim inside. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, revealing rows of shelves stacked with dusty boxes. The room smelled musty, like forgotten memories. I grabbed the nearest box and opened it. Inside were old newspapers and letters that seemed to tell countless stories. And then I saw it, a small, ornate mirror, partially covered by crumpled papers on a shelf opposite me. It shimmered faintly, even in the dim light. I hesitated, then walked over to it. My reflection looked hollow, almost ghost-like. Behind me, dark shadows danced along the walls, shifting unpredictably. I swallowed hard, feeling as if something was woven into the very fabric of the mirror. That's when I realized the whispers had transformed into urgent pleas, and one name echoed through the air, loud and clear. Find me. The moment I heard it, a surge of understanding hit me. This wasn't merely about searching for answers. It was about discovering what I had unleashed and who had been waiting for me all along. But before I could process it, the door behind me slammed open, and a familiar figure stepped inside, blocking my escape. The man's sharp features were illuminated now, a sinister grin spreading across his face. "Did you think you could escape?" he asked, tilting his head, surveying me like a predator eyeing its prey. I knew then that the true hunt had just begun. My heart raced as I stared at him, the smile on his face sending a cold dread through me. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but the words were stuck in my throat. Every instinct told me to flee, but there was nowhere to go. "Do you even know what you've unleashed?" he taunted, stepping closer. The shadows seemed to follow him, deepening the gloom in the room. I glanced back at the door, calculating my chances. I could dart past him, but I might not make it. I don't understand," I stammered, desperation creeping into my voice. His grin widened at my fear, like he was savoring it. I could see the glint of something wicked in his eyes. "Oh, but you will," he said, his voice smooth like silk but laced with malice. "You're tied to this place now, just like me." The words punctured the fog of anxiety swirling in my mind. Tied? What did that mean? Without thinking, I grabbed the mirror off the shelf, clutching it tightly. It felt warm against my palm, as if it recognized me. For a moment, I considered using it to reflect the terrifying figure before me, hoping to see a weakness I could exploit. "Are you going to hide behind that?" he taunted, eyeing the mirror. "You've got no power here." I took a shaky step back, forcing myself to look away from his predator's gaze. "What do you want from me?" The room grew colder, making my breath visible. The shadows flickered, growing restless. He maintained his chilling smile, but his eyes gleamed with something eerily predatory. "Oh, I want you to find me after all. But it's not just a game for you, is it?" As I held the mirror, the whispers surged again, drowning out his words. I felt the urgency in them, pressing down on me, as if they were calling me to action. I couldn't ignore their desperate plea. I needed to understand. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed down the corridor outside. It sounded like something heavy had fallen, or maybe someone had stumbled. My heart leapt at the sound. It seemed like help was finally coming, but would they make it in time? The man's expression morphed from delight to irritation. "This is our moment, and you're wasting it." He lunged at me, but I sidestepped him, heart pounding in my chest. I darted for the door, hammering it open and stumbling into the hallway, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I didn't stop to look back. The corridor stretched before me, but I didn't know where to turn. The laughter echoed again, bouncing off the walls like thunder, but I kept running. I had to find a way out. I just needed a direction. Then, I remembered. The engravings on the wall. They weren't just art. They were instructions. I could feel them pulling me, guiding me in my subconscious. I had to make it back there. I sprinted toward the symbols, hoping I wasn't too late. Every step felt like a race against fate, a countdown to either my freedom or my utter ruin. I turned the corner just in time to see the symbols looming up ahead, my urgency renewed with every heartbeat. But just as I reached for the wall, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, blocking my path. It was him again, grinning broadly as he stepped into the light. "Did you really think you could escape me?" he sneered. "This is just the beginning." My breath caught. The hunt was far from over, and I could feel the walls of my reality closing in around me. I hesitated, the weight of the watch in my hand anchoring me, that creeping sense of dread coiling tighter around my chest. The symbols on the wall shimmered faintly, an invitation, a warning, or perhaps both. My instincts screamed at me to bolt back the way I came, but I stood rooted to the spot, unwilling to let fear dictate my actions. "Your instincts never served you well," he said, his voice a low rumble echoing through the corridor. "But I can help, if you let me." His outstretched hand seemed to beckon me, but a pit opened in my stomach. What was behind that hungry smirk? What would it mean to accept his offer? "No, I won't listen to you," I shot back, determination igniting a flicker of bravery within me. I turned my gaze toward the symbols, feeling them tug at my consciousness. They felt like answers trapped behind a veil, a language I needed to decipher. "Such defiance," he mocked. "It'll only make this worse for you." He stepped closer, shadows flicking in time with his movements, like a dark cloak attempting to swallow me whole. I clutched the mirror tighter, the surface warm and thrumming with energy. Then I remembered what it showed me earlier, the hidden truths lurking just beneath the surface. I turned to face him fully, unsure if my resolve was enough. "What do you want from me, really?" "Like I said." He leaned closer, his features now a swirl of anxious energy, raw malice. "You're already tied to this place. I'm just here to make you realize it." "Realize what?" My voice quivered, a defensive shield against the uncertainty wrapping around me. "Every choice matters. Everything you seek is intertwined. You can embrace this bond or continue running until it consumes you," he replied, his eyes glinting with dark amusement. I took a deep breath, stepping slightly towards him, forcing the fear to the edges of my mind. "And if I refuse?" He chuckled, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "You'll still be a part of it. Trust me, I won't let you go so easily." The air thickened, and suddenly the whispers intensified around us, pleading, swirling into echoes of forgotten memories. I felt them tugging at the edges of my mind, and I knew I could not turn my back on them any longer. With a growing sense of purpose, I squared my shoulders and said, "Then show me. Show me what you mean." His expression shifted, surprise flickering momentarily across his distorted features. "Ah, now we're getting somewhere." Before I could react, he reached towards the mirror, a grotesque dance of shadows swirling around him. The symbols on the wall brightened, illuminating the space with an eerie glow. The watch pulsed in rhythm with the mirror, the very fabric of reality around us tremoring. "Remember, the answer lies between shadows and light," he uttered, his voice echoing as if from the depth of the darkness itself. "Find the balance." A corridor of memories unfolded in front of me, stretching beyond comprehension. I could glimpse echoes of laughter, pain, and the warmth of familiar faces. Each moment surged through me with overwhelming clarity, my connection to them deepening, binding me to the very essence of this mall's stories. But amidst them, an unsettling truth emerged. Shadows danced just beyond the light, threatening to spiral into chaos. "Embrace it or succumb," he echoed, drawing near. "What will it be?" All at once the ground trembled beneath me, sending ripples of unease coursing through my veins. In that chaotic split second of decision I lunged forward, holding the mirror aloft. The cymbals began to resonate, a vibrant melody thrumming at their heart. The whispers crescendoed, drowning out the darkness. "Look!" I called out, feeling energy build as I faced the mirror toward him. "Look at what you are!" A blinding light erupted from its surface, sending shards of illumination brilliant against the wall. In that moment, I glimpsed something that flickered fleetingly within him. Not pure evil, but fragmented memories, lost souls trapped in this endless cycle, all tangled together in cosmic resonance. The reflection revealed moments of loneliness, desperation, and the hunger for connection. I recognized the shadows as fragments of his past, longing to be set free, just like me. "What have you done?" he hissed, catching sight of his true self reflected in the glass. I felt a shift, a crack in the relentless facade he'd created. In my heart, I knew this was the answer, an opportunity buried deep amidst the horror. "Let go," I implored, my voice steadying. "You don't have to haunt this place anymore. You can be free." The shadows around him quivered, flickering, as if caught between my plea and their instinct to cling to darkness. But the pulse of the light remained strong. Suddenly, the figure broke from his stupor, rage boiling over. "You think you have the power to save anyone?" he thundered, but his voice had weakened against the brilliance of the mirror. I pressed forward, my heart pounding. "You're not just a monster. You're part of this too. Embrace what you once were. Let it all go." With that, I thrust the mirror forward, shoving our fates into collision. A deafening silence enveloped us, enveloping the echoes in a swirling cascade of light. In that heartbeat, the figure wailed, a sound raw with despair and something akin to relief. The boundaries between us blurred, and I held on as long as I could, staying anchored to the memory of light and warmth. Then, like smoke caught in a whirlwind, he disappeared, lost within the brilliance of the mirror, vanishing like a fleeting shadow at dawn. The echoes quieted, drawn back into the stillness of the room. I stumbled, the glow of the mirror fading slowly, its warmth ebbing like the tide. Alone now, I collapsed against the wall, panting. The room no longer felt claustrophobic. It was filled with the remnants of stories long unfurled, memories freed, tied to me still. But even as I began to breathe more easily, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching from the corners, the sense that darkness still lingered beyond comprehension. I glanced back at the corridor, thinking for a moment of escape. But all I could manage were half-formed thoughts of what lay beyond. Questions without answers, shadows without mystery, and uncertainty festering beneath every new revelation. With a final glance at the mirror, I made my decision. I was stepping out of the mall, leaving behind its echoes and whispers, its history. I had found part of the truth, but I knew without a doubt that I still wasn't done with this place, nor was it quite finished with me. Arriving back in the light of day, I took a deep breath. A sense of lingering unease washed over me, a reminder that the labyrinth of darkness and light would be waiting, just beyond the edges of understanding. Would I return? Only time would tell.